Imagine a world where enormous creatures roam the earth, violating the rules with their commanding presence. If we consider the stories in the Bible, it might not seem so implausible for acts of nature. There is an intriguing mystery hidden in the shadows of antiquity, where legends and truth are intertwined. The mysterious race of enormous creatures known as the Nephilim were these towering entities that walked the earth. How did they originate? Were they fallen angels, as some ancient texts claim? According to traditions, a distinct race was created by mixing celestial and terrestrial lineages. As we examine the unusual today, the distinctions between ordinary and extraordinary will blur. Mystery surrounding the giants known as the Nephilim. Welcome to a brand new Hidden Histories Disclosed video. Let's go to the story. Those Nephilim. One of the most puzzling groups in biblical literature is the Nephilim, who are frequently translated as giants in English. The Book of Genesis 6:1-4 is the first place in the Bible's tales where the Nephilim are mentioned. According to this, sons of God married men's daughters and fathered offspring with them. The mighty men of ancient men of renown, or the Nephilim, were the name given to the offspring. According to certain scholars, the sons of God are fallen angels who left their heavenly realm, and others think that they were the godly or strong human rulers who took on human form. When the evil Cain descendants intermarried with the wicked Seth descendants, the existence of the Nephilim have had a significant impact on human history, forever altering old civilizations. We need to investigate the origins in order to completely comprehend the Nephilim myth, because they play a significant part in the genesis of the Nephilim, a story in which angels and humans coexist. They have a distinctly diverse genesis and were made for various causes and at various times. Genesis. Various texts claim that some of Satan's fallen angels deviated from there, deciding instead to manifest and communicate with people in ways different from how angels did. Genesis chapter 6 verses 1-5 show what this strange and forbidden connection was intended to do. The scripture explains when men started to proliferate on earth, the sons of God noticed how lovely the daughters of men were when they were born to them, and they took. The Lord declared that because man is imperfect, my spirit will not battle him for all of eternity. The Nephilim were on the earth in those times and after. Mortal, his days shall be 120 years. Additionally, the sons of God had relationships with human women and produced children with them. Became the mighty men of venerable old men in this place, with many people understanding the title, Sons of God, to cite the fallen angels who were drawn to human women and decided to take them as their spouses and progeny. The mighty men of old, often known as the Nephilim, were large, powerful beings. People were noticeably taller and stronger than average humans, yet they were more than just physically imposing their bloodline, which sprang from an unholy union between celestial, and the presence of these unholy entities gave earthly beings a demonic aspect to their nature. It was believed that unions and the children they produced severely polluted God's creation and caused a divine punishment intended to purge the earth of all sin and allow it to start over. The Great Flood. The Nephilim are also mentioned in the Book of Enoch, who refers to them as the children born through the interbreeding of the Watchers, fallen angels, and mankind. The book claims the Watchers are a troop of angels that revolted against God under the leadership of Azazel and Shemi-Hazar. God, by coming to earth and imparting to humanity the offspring of the Watchers, forbidden knowledge, and human women, formed the enormous species known as the Nephilim, which corrupts and destroys earth. This further inflames Yahweh's wrath, and the Bible says that the result of half-angelic, half-human hybrids are produced as a result of the mixing of the fallen with the mortals. The Book of Enoch depicts the Nephilim as giants and savages who had offspring in Genesis 6:4, posed a menace to and looted humanity, or to put it another way, were supernatural man-eating giants. Those depicted in the Book of Enoch as great gods were incensed by the actions of the fallen angels, consigned the Watchers to a prison below in the depths of the earth, and Enoch turned into Enoch served as the go-between for the gods and the incarcerated Watchers. But God didn't listen to him, decided that the planet and all of its inhabitants must be what the world has become. The Great Flood, which is claimed to have destroyed the Nephilim as part of the punishment. Enoch is transported to heaven in a chariot of fire in the biblical story, leaving the Watchers in their prison. Numerous reports of post-flood giant races and potent nations in the country of Canaan are mentioned. A huge biblical race called the Rephaim, sometimes known as the Annukites or the Avim, lived during the time. They lived in Moab and Palestine around the time of Abraham, and these races inspired dread, and nevertheless they also functioned as examples of God's power and the Israelites' wonder. According to religious belief in the Book of Deuteronomy, A powerful people known as the Amites once lived there. As many and as tall like the Anakites, they were also regarded as Rappites like the Anakites. Deuteronomy 210:11. However, the Moabites referred to them as Amites. Then continues, mentioning also as giants were said to have lived there in ancient times, and the Ammonites called them Zamzumims. 20 in Deuteronomy 2. One of the last of his kind was Og, the famed Rappaim king of Bashan. The manner in which A's sons perished as a result of their antagonism to God's people is significant. The Bible mentions a big bed, and the last Rapte was the king of Bashan. More than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, it was ornamented with iron. Deuteronomy 3:11. In Deuteronomy 31:4, God is credited with overthrowing Shion, Dog, and their lands, demonstrating his ability to overcome dangerous opponents despite their enormous size and strength that God provided. The text reports that following the Israelites' triumph over them, they prepared to enter Promised Land. Moses sent 12 spies into the territory to gather information about the people living there. But the spies came into descendants of the fearsome race of giants known as the Anakites who live in the region. 2 Israelite spies, Joshua and Caleb, speak of these creatures in southern Israel. They presented to the Israelites an object that was so enormous that they felt like grasshoppers in comparison. Negative report on the territory they had spied out, describing the territory we had traveled through as all of the people that we observed in spies were enormous, and the country there devours its residents. There we observed the Nephilim and the Anakite descendants of the Nephilim, and to ourselves, it appeared as though grasshoppers, and so we appeared to them in spite of God's promises in the fertile land. 10 of the 12 spies returned in dread after seeing the giants, questioning God's promise as a result. Only Caleb and Joshua maintain their faith and are persuaded to do so by the imposing stature of the population, admitting the challenges but remaining steadfast in their conviction that as Joshua and his army defeated the Anakim and gained control of their territory, God's victory was assured. One of the final giants to be vanquished by the Israelites was the line of Enoch, Goliath. A different tale of a giant, possibly the most well-known ancient giant from the Bible, is the fabled. There is a claim that a champion by the name of Goliath, who was from the Gothic, came out of Kings 17:4. He was 6 cubits tall and stood in the Philistine camp. He had a bronze helmet over his head. He wore bronze greaves and a scale armor coat that weighed 5,000 shekels on his legs. Giants like Goliath and his siblings re-emerge in the ancient world, along with, according to later tales, Goliath from the Philistine camp was a famed giant who challenged the Israelites. Standing at least 9 feet 9 inches tall, he had imposing height and a powerful physique. He was a frightening opponent with armor and weapons, but David's unshakable confidence in God enabled him to the story of David and Goliath, in which he defeated Goliath and brought honor to God's name, is one of the biblical literature's most enthralling stories, have been told and replayed numerous times throughout history, is frequently employed as a metaphor to illustrate the victory of the underdog over a strong foe. This passage from 1 Samuel chapter 17 carefully recounts this timeless incident. A massive Philistine warrior named Goliath appeared from the crowd and brazenly challenged David. He suggested a plan for the Israelites that was well known among Eastern cultures. This strategy involves a one-on-one conflict between the representative of one side and the other. Army would engage in combat with the victor's representative, deciding the fate for the entire in an effort to lessen bloodshed. The victor claimed victory for everyone, not just for themselves, but for the entire army, as the entire army of the losing side believed they could beat Goliath. Goliath's challenge was not a simple one. The greater warrior offered to stand in for the Philistine army. He repeated his commitment for 40 days on a lone occasion, walking forward every morning and every evening. This deed, which demonstrated his powerful stature and strength, wasn't merely a test of his physical prowess, but also a psychological tactic meant to frighten and demoralize the Israelites. But thus far, a little child named David was engaged in something in the Judean hillsides, far from the ongoing fighting. David was taking care of his father's sheep, and was probably ignorant that he was too young to join the army. His main concern during the Philistine menace was for his older brothers. While his father Jesse got older and couldn't make the lengthy trek, he served in Saul's army. He ordered David to give meals to his siblings and inquire about their welfare in order to keep tabs on his sons. David arrived at the Israelite camp and found himself in the midst of combat preparations. He made the decision to say hello to his brothers serving on the front lines. But as David was shocked when he heard Goliath, the Philistine champion, issue his audacious challenge. had never heard of such a challenge prior to David's indignation at the Philistines' insolence. Asking, he told his brothers that Israel would be exonerated by killing Goliath and receive rewards for it. King Saul summoned David after learning of his determination, and David reassured Saul by saying that just as he guarded his father's livestock from lions and bears and believed that the Lord would help him defeat Goliath, who had delivered him from the bears and the lion's paws would also deliver him from Goliath. David's bravery moved Saul, and faith praised him by telling him to go and the Lord be with you. Saul prepared David in his armor for the next fight, but the inexperienced David was unable to wear it. His only weapons were his sling, and he opted to wear his shepherd's clothing in order to maneuver in it. David was in his most basic shepherd garb, holding his staff and 5 smooth stones he had selected from a stream, was prepared to take on the colossal Goliath, and they engaged in a fierce battle. Goliath was clad and David was hated by heavy armor because they thought he was only a kid with a stick. He cursed David, promising to feed the birds and other wild animals with his meat. David, however, remained unflinching in his belief in the Lord, saying that, in contrast to Goliath, came toward him with weapons, and David, acting in the Lord's name, smote Goliath in the forehead. David then snatched Goliath's sword when the giant collapsed unconscious after being struck by a stone from his sling. The Philistines fled in terror after seeing their champion defeated by his own sword and beheaded him. The Israelites' monumental victory over the Philistines marked a turning point. Additionally, it made David a national hero and strengthened their faith in God. Functioned as a forerunner to David's later rule as king of Israel, during which he brought peace and prosperity to the country. But where did Goliath, who was he a Nephilim, an ancestor of the ancient Raphites, or Anakin if he was portrayed as a giant? Species with a reputation for being enormously large. Some experts argue that Goliath wasn't a true giant, but if Goliath was affected by the hereditary gigantism condition that had been passed down via his family tree, a genetically determined real behemoth or a figurative giant representing a dangerous opponent, his defeat by David symbolized the victory of faith against seemingly insurmountable adversaries. Conclusion: David and his warriors engaged in conflict with other people later on in the Bible's books of Samuel and Chronicles. David's reputation as a giant slayer was further cemented by the battles against giants related to Goliath. Against these giants, David's physical and spiritual fortitude, as well as these stories, serve as further evidence of his capacity to encourage his audience, God, and perseverance in the face of adversity, while also understanding the fallen Nephilim. The Old Testament's description of angels and giants is still incomplete and open to interpretation. They bring a complex layer of mystery to the biblical story. Or are the Nephilim truly there? Relics from a bygone era testifying to a period when supernatural entities coexisted with mortals? Or are they figurative representations of deep spiritual truths veiled in stories? The Nephilim narrative is intertwined with tales of disobedient angels, divine wrath, and resilient human faith. Illuminates the delicate interplay between the divine and human. It reveals a celestial conflict between the forces of light and darkness that took place on a mortal battlefield. The story of David and Goliath is a potent metaphor for the difficulties we face. In real life, it represents the formidable challenges that may appear hard to overcome. Yet this tale tells us that nothing is too big to overcome with unflinching determination. To persevere in our pursuit despite what may seem like insurmountable obstacles, and to rely on our inner power and wisdom to lead us. As ancient wisdom advises, success will come if you have faith in yourself, accept the adventure ahead, and stay on your intended course. These ancient giants and their celestial origins are likely to leave us with the Nephilim. While there are still more doubts than answers regarding the true nature and presence of the Nephilim, their tale, which is veiled in myth and legend, is a monument to the enduring strength of ancient narratives and the human search to comprehend our ancestry. Thanks for watching another episode of Hidden Histories Revealed. Don't forget to subscribe and like.